Maputo. Merci de votre participation. Pour écouter notre session en français, veuillez cliquer en bas de votre écran sur l'onglet Interprétation et sélectionner le drapeau français.
Hello, bonjour, habari za leo. My name is Kevin Mutia.
Solofina Nekesa.
Lauren Arnza.
Ryan Fisher, Professional Officer at ICLE Africa. On behalf of ICLE Africa, the African Center for Cities, our future cities, and partners, I'm excited to welcome all of you to the Rise Africa 2021 Action Festival.
Rise Africa has been growing as a platform of thinkers, doers, enablers, committed to inspiring action for sustainable cities.
Rise Africa is about building active networks across academia, government, private sector, civil society, and the arts.
Our entry point is based not on articulating problems followed by proposing solutions, but rather on celebrating our cities as places of innovation and culture, while asking what more we can do to make them sustainable, inclusive, and vibrant.
This festival is hosting 46 sessions over 5 days from across 16 countries in Africa and the world. Every session aims to share new ideas, showcase ongoing actions, and launch new initiatives by bringing participants together to chart a new route forward.
We hope that the festival program will inspire you to commit to one or more specific actions that you or your organizations will take on. As this session closes, you will be redirected to a survey in which you can articulate these actions. We will follow up on this committed action throughout the year and offer resources, connections, and support. In this way, we are testing the idea that events can galvanize action, and we hope that you will join us in this effort.
Beyond this session, there are many ways to take part in the festival.
Register for further sessions.
Vote for your favorites in the photo competition.
Test your knowledge of African cities from our daily quiz.
Watch a variety of inspiring video provocations.
And listen and dance to the Rise Africa 2021 playlist.
We hope that you will make all attempts to reach out to new people and build lasting connections.
Before we begin, it's important to note that this session is being recorded and that by participating, you are consenting to be recorded. All recordings will be available on the program page after the festival.
Creative expression is vital for creating new futures for our cities. So we invite you to enter this session in the spirit of creativity and dreaming.
To my future children, I bequeath this continent, borders lowered and turned into a soft pile of dust, smooth sand under steady feet. Your birthright is a country of flowers, a city that holds you even with your complicated lineage, the way this city has held my heart, held its arms out for all of the lost people who found solace in it. Your heirloom is this land and all its wormholes, portals hidden in plain sight between city skyscrapers, where people from here resemble people from far away places, and differences are muted while life happens. I reimagine you a country that does not cage its doves, a bequest of waters that pool precious histories, mountains that stand guard to protect against the unknown, a nation who preserves compassion over everything else, a mouth that can hum many languages, and a spirit that rises above its fears.
Good afternoon, good morning, bonjour. Welcome to this session. My name is Karaoke Mogo. I'm the moderator. I work for water and sanitation for the urban poor, WhatsApp. Today's session is titled Slum-upgrading through integrated water, sanitation, and development solutions, lessons from Maputo and Nairobi. This session is about integrating urban services, especially in the context of slum upgrading. And we all know that in urban environments, access to basic services such as water supply, sanitation, housing, drainage, solid waste management, and various other services are closely related. Planning and investing in one leads to the need for addressing the other. And improvements in one basically doesn't mean in holistic development or improvement of lives of the urban city dwellers. It is therefore imperative that planning and investment decisions for basic urban services are done in an integrated context. Today, we will hear presentations on integration of services from practices and experiences from Nairobi, Maputo, and Accra. And this session is organized by WhatsApp in conjunction with Akiba Mashinani Trust, based in Nairobi, and also Arquitectura Son Fronteras, España, or Architects Without Borders. It's going to be 75 minutes or thereabouts, and it is in two sections mainly. The first one is presentations from the experiences, and the second one is a panel discussion where we'll have the presenters and one more guest from the city government of Nairobi, sitting in a panel and addressing some questions that you may have or you may have raised during the conversation. One of the requests I would like to make is that let's all direct our questions to the chat box, not to the Q&A. Hello? Okay. Let's all direct questions to the chat box. We'll be monitoring those questions. We are not going to be able to allow people to speak because of how the session is arranged. And due to a time shortage, we like to have as many conversations as possible. So we'll be monitoring the chat box and also taking your questions one by one and seeing what we can channel to the panel at a later stage. Without much ado, I would like to introduce the speakers for today. The first one would be Nerea Ajuriagosker from WhatsApp. Nerea, take it easy. Nerea has a scientific background and currently works as a research and evaluation officer in WhatsApp. She has a private sector and research background working in Belgium and Spain. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from University of Navarra and MSc in Global Health from University of Barcelona. We'll also have Jane Wero, a seasoned practitioner who is a lawyer by profession and holds a master's degree in NGO management from the London School of Economics. She's executive director and also a founder member of Akiba Mashinani Trust, AMT, that is leading a project in Nairobi called the Mukuru Special Planning Area, working very close with the county government of Nairobi. And you'll be hearing more from Jen. We'll also have a presentation jointly done by Sarah and Silva. Sarah Martin works for Architecture Sans Frontiers, Architects Without Borders, based in Maputo, where she's coordinating projects to improve mobility and slum upgrading in Maputo, Mozambique. She holds a master's degree in architecture from Polytechnic University of Madrid. And yeah, she's also studied in Ahmedabad, India, and in Architectura di Venezia in Italy. In that presentation, she'll be doing it with Silva Jacinto Magaya, a civil engineer who started in Universidade Eduardo Mondlane, UEM, in Mozambique, where after studying, he headed the civil engineering department, became the deputy director of the faculty, and he has also been a manager of UN Habitat Mozambique, CEO of Empresa de Desenvolvimento de Maputo Sul, the Maputo South Development Company, where he's seen implementation of Maputo Ring Road, Maputo Katembe Bridge, and the Katembe Boan and the Ponta Douro South Link roads. He's also worked for WhatsApp and is currently the Councillor for Planning, Infrastructure, and Environment in Maputo Municipality. We'll also have a presentation by Sam Drabo, a very short one. He's leading WhatsApp's knowledge management, helping to ensure learning is captured and disseminated. He has done over 30 publications on diverse aspects of urban wash, and Sam has a background in evaluation, research, learning, and has previously worked in the evaluation program of RAND Europe. So please, let's welcome all our presenters. And I would like to give this opportunity to Nerea to get us started off. So Nerea, please take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mugo, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nerea Jurigo-Geascoa from Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor, and today I'm going to briefly talk to you about a piece of research that we did in 2019-2020 around slum dwellers' prioritization of basic service improvements for their communities. Part of this short presentation is going to be interactive. We want you to think like the participants in our study and tell us what basic services you would prioritize for improvement in your communities, and what do you think the main barriers to implement these improvements are. So you can either scan the code on the top right of the screen, or you can follow the link that I pasted on the chat box. Next, please. This project comes from WhatsApp's aim to integrate our expertise in urban water and sanitation within the wider urban city development, recognizing that for improvements in water and sanitation, we need other services to be improved, like roads or tenure regularization. And at the same time, any improvement in water and sanitation has huge impact in other services, such as healthcare. Through a literature review, we identified that there have been few previous systematic studies around basic service prioritization from the user perspective, and that little is known about the overall perception that residents in low-income urban areas have of municipal services in their communities. Also, where these studies existed, these were at very small scale or in very specific locations. Next, please. For this reason, we decided to conduct a study at citywide level that focused on understanding first, what services do residents in low-income communities prioritize for improvement? Second, is there any clear relationship between the choice of a certain service and other factors such as respondents' gender or respondents' perception of quality of services or tenure security? And third, what do low-income residents perceive as the main barriers for these improvements to be implemented? Next, please. Okay, so the study was conducted in two locations, Accra in Ghana and Nairobi in Kenya. For each of these two cities, we identified all low-income communities from the more extreme to the more moderate, regardless of their size, and including both formally recognized settlements and informal settlements. We conducted a large-scale systematic household survey with around 3,000 respondents per city, which allowed for the characterization of 8 to 9 groupings of low-income communities that shared similar characteristics, but were different from each other. So these groupings were defined through the combination of 5 criteria that we thought initially might affect the perception of service improvements. The first one is whether due to its layout, how easy would it be to upgrade an area? The second one is the area at risk of being demolished or residents to be displaced through any other mechanism? 3, to what extent is the area under environmental hazards or prone to extreme weather events? 4, do residents have any social or political leverage to achieve improvements? And finally, as most service improvements happen in clustered areas, we accounted for geographical proximity of the areas that shared similar characteristics. Next, please. We also defined a list of 17 services that can be considered basic in an urban context. We developed an initial list of services and verified it through key informant interviews with urban planners and decision makers and focus group discussions with residents in Accra and Nairobi. The list was overall perceived as comprehensive and also internationally understood. So the final list included administrative support with tenure rights, air pollution control, education, including both primary and secondary, electricity supply, environment, this means clean rivers, having public spaces, firefighting services, flood control and storm drains, garbage removal, street cleaning, and pest control, healthcare, including hospitals, clinics, and health visitors, housing build quality, street paving, policing and crime prevention, roads and transport outside the community, sanitation, social care, street lining, and water supply. So to avoid any bias from providing a list in a certain order, and also to make the experience a little bit more interactive for the participants in the study, we gave them a set of cards that included both the service written down and also a picture, so they could use them to reflect and think about their choices of services to be prioritized. So now we would like to hear from you, and we would like you to think of the communities where you live or low-income communities that you know very well, and put yourselves in the shoes of our participants. So I've seen that many of you have already participated in our Mentimeter poll, and maybe we can take a look at the results and see how similar these are from the ones that we got from Accra and Nairobi. So we see that many people here are prioritizing sanitation, healthcare, and water supply as the main priorities for improvement. We also see, if we go to the barriers, Elizabeth, please, that corruption is perceived as the main barrier for these improvements to happen. At the same time, slow bureaucracy is also considered a huge barrier. People in this session also think that authorities have insufficient money and that they might lack interest in the community. So let's see how similar that is to the results we got from our participants in Accra and Nairobi. Go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so our study found out that in Accra, the top 5 priorities were flood control, garbage removal, housing quality, sanitation, and social care. When we asked to narrow it down to just one choice, flood control was the main category. For anyone who knows the context of Accra, this will not be a surprise that flood control and garbage removal are among the top priorities, as this is an issue of serious concern across the city. Severity of floods in Accra, particularly downstream, are highly affected by drains being obstructed by solid waste, and floods tend to be devastating. So these findings were pretty coherent with what we understood of the city. In Nairobi, the top priorities were sanitation, street paving, water supply, environment, and garbage removal. In fact, from our perspective as a water and sanitation focused organization, all these 5 categories are very interrelated and interdependent. And when we asked people to choose just one, their top choice was water supply. So we think that for sanitation services to be efficient, indeed, roads need to be in good condition to allow tanker trucks to access households, protecting them from burying their sludge on site and therefore polluting the environment. In fact, for most low-income communities in Nairobi, they are located in riparian lands, so it is not surprising that environment and street paving are seen as priorities. When looking at the different area groupings that we created, these choices did not change significantly within its city, showing that there is less intra-city variation that we initially expected when creating the groupings. Next slide, please. We explored what might affect this prioritization through a logistic regression analysis and found out that gender had little or no effect on the prioritization of services, of any service. Neither did respondents' perceived risk of eviction. And by risk of eviction, we refer to risk of eviction from their own dwelling and not from their land. This can be due to the way in which the question was phrased. So people would have to consider what is best for their community, so they don't have to think they would have to think as a member of a community and not so much as an individual. And I think that this is something that should be explored. We also explored whether the perception of current quality of services had any effect on the service prioritization. And we asked people to classify each service as excellent, adequate, poor, or non-existent. And in fact, we found out that for nearly all services, people who rated the current service as less than excellent were more likely to prioritize that service, which is not surprising. What was interesting is that for both cities, people who rated the service levels as poor were markedly more likely to prioritize the service. This was at rates of 20 odds more likely to prioritize those services, which is huge. So this happened even more than for the category of non-existent. And this might be because these people have some access to a certain service and that access is of very poor quality, so they see a need for an improvement, whereas if you don't have any access or you have sufficient access, you might not be so interested in improving that when resources are limited. So next slide, please. In both cities, in the same way as participants in this session, corruption was perceived as the main barrier, followed by lack of interest from the authorities and slow bureaucracy. Interestingly, these aspects put the focus on decision makers and politicians, which may suggest that residents feel that service improvement is out of their control, and that they have little trust on their leaders, which we think is interesting when considering slum upgrading. Next slide, please. And just to wrap up this part of the webinar, I just want to go through 4 take-home messages. One is that systematic studies of this type can be of value for informing urban planning at the city level from the user perspective in combination with expert assessments. Integrated urban development is complex and user perspective should be considered to ensure sustainability and acceptability of interventions. Residents in the study locations prioritize services that are extremely linked. Service improvements should not be considered in isolation, despite what funding streams might suggest. And finally, decision makers are perceived as the main barrier for improvements by residents. This can affect acceptability of service improvements in the future by residents and maintenance once those improvements are implemented. Next slide, please. So this is it from me. This was a pretty light touch presentation on the study, of which we are performing a more in-depth, more technical analysis. So please, if you want any more information or you want to discuss any further, feel free to get in touch. And in the meantime, please enter your questions in the chat box and we will reply throughout the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nerea, for that beautiful presentation. I would like to encourage all participants to put any questions in the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. At this point, I'd like to welcome Sarah and Silva for the second presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mukuru. Thank you very much, Rise Africa. The video, yeah, video is on, yeah. Let us talk about the right to the city. When I say we, I'm referring to the authorities, being politicians or technicians, communities, and the third sector. When I say we, I'm referring to the municipality of Maputo, all the people living in the Bairro neighborhood of Shamankulu C, WhatsApp, and ASF. When I say right to the city, I'm not saying rights or city, but city. I'm saying every single human right that a human settlement costs. Human settlements are scenarios of life. If people living in a human settlement enjoy the right to water, sanitation, tenancy, to intimacy and space, as well as durable housing, they have habitability. If people living in human settlements enjoy the latter,
Sarah, we are losing you. I don't know whether you need to turn off your camera,
right
maybe.
To change the cities, they have access right to the city. They have access to all the human rights to the city, to their needs. Okay, is that better? Hello, yeah.
Yes, better,
better,
Sarah. Thank you, better.
Okay. They have the right to decide how to adapt the city to their needs together with their neighbors. It is an integral approach to slum upgrading. Next, please. It took us 2 years to understand that Shamankulu Se community didn't understand the concept right to the city. It was a question of words. People living in Shamankulu, a slum situated at the first ring of slums around the colonial city center, couldn't understand they were living in the city. They believed they were living in the outskirts, in the slum, in the bairro, but not the city. As soon as we change the word, so the question follows, how can we access the right to the bairro? And when I say we, I'm referring to the municipality of Maputo or the people living in Mukuru, WhatsApp, and ASF. As Architects Without Borders, I have the great honor of working together with WhatsApp and municipality of Maputo in this incredible project. No one better than Vereador Magaya, Councillor of Land Planning, Urbanism and Environment, can describe it. The Habitat Project. Next, please.
Thank you. Now I'm going to talk briefly about this Mukuru Bairro Habitat Project. We are addressing slum upgrading through integrated water, sanitation, and development solutions. But first of all, before going through the presentation, let me thank you for the opportunity of sharing this project with you, the thinkers, doers, and enablers that have joined the Rise Africa movement. And I would like to send a special hi to my colleagues from WhatsApp, with whom I worked in my last assignment before rejoining the municipality. This project aims at representing also the thinkers, the doers, and enablers of Maputo municipality, the NGOs with whom we have been working, and the Shamankulu community in particular as beneficiaries. Next, please. We are going to do this to make effective use of the time allocated for the presentation, going essentially through these 6 groups of information, starting by 10 context ideas. Then we ask you to share images, and we are going to describe the meaning of the images. 1 method specifically developed for this approach, 1 urban tool as a result, and at the end, we'll show what are the next steps and share with you 1 good news. By the way, this picture, the picture you see here, shows a member of the community of Shamankulu asking at a radio debate about how to access land ownership, showing that they are conscious about the importance of this. Next, please. Next slide, please. So in context, idea number 1, we briefly share with you the context on Mozambique with regard to land tenure. Basically 3 important aspects. The first is that in Mozambique, all land belong to the government. May I say, it's owned by the state, by law, and cannot be sold or other to among people. The second aspect is when we use land, it's not our property, but it's a concession that we can obtain. And when this happens, we receive a land deed, locally known as DUAT. We say DUAT. And point number 3, there is a scheme to what we call land regularization system. It is applicable for those who are using the land before receiving authorization to do so. Next, please. In the context idea number 2, we briefly show the relation between formal and informal settlements in Maputo. And by the way, Maputo, it hosts around 1.2 million inhabitants as a result of the 2017 census. It is growing as a metropolitan area. And we noticed that nowadays 15 square kilometers of the city is only formal. So the pattern you show in the first pictures, while more than 80% of the remaining area is informal settlements, covering around 75 square. Next, please. In context 3, we developed or we tried to identify the type of informal settlements in which Chamankulu, our target area, fits. So we use this diagram in which there are 6 types of settlements can be identified depending on the combination of density and level of planification. According to our survey, we classify Chamankulu as a category D settlement, so both highly densified and non-structured. Now we are trying to implement a partial planning which was developed in 2015, targeting this area with these specificities. Next, please. So entering through context idea 4, which is addressing urbanism and land planning challenges. After recognizing that Chamankulu is a category C D settlement, we also identified the following devastating challenges, and we were almost quite to give up on this endeavor. First of all, what are the minimum standards defining acceptable living conditions so that we can define what we want to address? I remember the shortly shared list of 17 basic services, as Nereus pointed out. Our second question was, when you try to bring current urban norms, you cannot put them in place without wiping the whole neighborhood, which is a big challenge. So we identified the first 5 priorities, as Sarah was mentioning in her intervention, which we consider adaptable and feasible to the Chamankulu conditions. Next 5, we resourced from the Maputo Development Plan 2019-2023, which is a 5-year strategic plan. We are trying to align all our activities in the Bairro with what is defined in this strategic plan. We point out pillar number 5 of this plan, defining the target as developing and basic service for citizens, with particular emphasis to the strategic goal number 47, develop municipality infrastructure buildings and public equipments, markets. Then we stopped the context idea number 6, asking ourselves what would be the best strategy to implement the project. We also recognize that each of us has their own image of what a future informal settlements and trying to upgrade. For example, the publication Futuros da Mafalala, which means Mafalala future. Mafalala is one of our famous bairros here in Maputo. This publication gives us 3 alternative scenarios for the particular case of Maputo baseline. First would be a non-regulated growth. So letting the municipality grows as it is doing naturally. The second would be a radical intervention. In Spanish, it is rated as tabula rasa, so meaning wiping out everything and then building social housing from scratch. And the third approach is the conscious intervention, which means upgrading. And the last one is the one we address. So we are starting from what exists, try to improve it, develop and plan. And this is what we are going to share in the next chapters. In context idea 7, the feasibility of formalizing this area was assessed, and we also compare with the trend and the demand of requests the municipality has been dealing with. And we want to share here that each month, in average, municipal authorities receive up to 150 DUAT applications. and developed an 11-step method towards Duat to make easy access to Duat, particularly to those living in low-income settlements. Throughout this method, which was supported by the World Bank, between 2011 and 2017, 40,000 plots received Duats, and as I mentioned, most of them in the less developed areas, so informal settlements, these slum upgrading programs. Next slide, please. Now, in context idea 8, we concentrate in the interventions that can be done in Chamankulu C, particularly. I'm not going to follow the details of the time frame, but you can see that this process started around 2005, which it is a long, long time. It sometimes seems endless, but it's not, as we indicate in the most recent report that just published on integrated slum upgrading with the work of WhatsApp and Architects Sans Frontières. And one of the main learning is that it is an enormous challenge. Improvements are visible now. You can see things changing in the place, but at the same time, there is still so much to do. Next slide, please. So
3 minutes,
in context,
Silva, 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay, in context idea number 9, we learn from the current situation of Chamankulu C. We line the main challenges and we compare them with the existing values. So this list of 1 to 6 issues are the potentialities Chamankulu C has. I would ask Elizabeth to pass the slides more quickly so that we can make a proper use of the time. So you can see the challenge of working in a narrow, having people sharing the same plot. You would find more than 10 families, then it's a big challenge to find agreements. Next, please. We are producing or developing a partial plan to this area. We call it Plano Parcial de Urbanização de Chamankulu, which once approved and confirmed will be used as a detailed plan to regularize the duats for the people. So we have a target of 7,000 families to have their duats formalized. Next, please. So these are the context ideas summing up. I will finalize the presentation sharing with you what will be the lessons we have. One of the challenges is to make these people come to the meetings. You know, in a surviving community, there is very little time for them to find space for participation. There is also a large trend of illiteracy. Very few of them can read and interpret a map. The good thing is they know physically the limits of their plots and they come with us, they point out where their limits are and helps us moving and changing the place. Next, please. So, as technicians, we look to the environment to Chamankulu's development. Elizabeth, are you moving the slide? Is it moving? So, this is our approach. We try to fly like an eagle and see us, please. What I want to show is the difference between it horizontally because they live there, but this doesn't bring obstacles for the way they assist us in change. Look at how this city, this area was in 2015. On our left-hand side, space is being acquired by sacrificing their own plots. Next slide, please. So this is another comparison of what it was before and how it looks now. You can see some blue dots in the right-hand side picture showing the improvements they are doing in their own plots. Next, please. The same happens in the ways they use walkway was and bicycle and turning this area more urbanizing. So an image of change is being created, an image of belief. You can see in this picture, image number 2, Miss Lydia. She's showing her Duat. So this is the deed, the title deed that people never dreamt to have, and now it is a reality. It took, in this case for her, 3 years participating in consultation meetings and hearings, and now she's testimony that she can have their land regularized. Next, please. We also try to show to them that this is not an easy step and explain how it took 3 years to have this piece of paper by explaining them all the bureaucratic paces we have to follow to have this thing done. Next, please.
Okay, wrap up.
And we are creating the image of the city by showing them the change, how it participating in the drawing and showing how it works. Next, please. And we ensure that we have all of them attending the discussion meetings. You will see on top a local meeting and the result at the bottom image. Next, please. We also developed a method, some drawings that we use to enhance this effort of awareness on the rights they have to the bureau. So this is just the resume of the 6 steps they have to follow to have the DUAT. You can move, please. Next slide. And it is summarized in the table you can see in the next slide. So we don't need to deal with people, illiterate people. They don't need to know how to read documents and fill forms. By doing it in the field, by working with the team, we make sure that this plan can be a reality. Next, please. In our final remarks, we want to highlight that this plan is adapted to the reality. It respects the values and traditions of the community, respects the spiritual, social, economic reality. As for example, this example you show here in the picture is a traditional ritual that people have in that area. Although being in an urban context, they continue keeping their traditions. In conclusion, next steps, please. Next slide. We are developing some practical changes in the field. We are finalizing the partial submitted to the municipality for approval, and once it is done, we will start regularizing the slides. You can pass the slides quickly. They are just showing, this is one example of conflicts managed by involvement of the communities. And I'm sorry to be a bit longer. We tried to share as much as possible details with you about this project. Thank you for the time allocated.
Thank you very much, Silva and Sarah. A very beautiful story there of what planning can do to improve people's lives. And now I would like to welcome Jen Wero from AMT with a presentation about Nairobi. Please keep the questions coming to the chat box for Nerea, for Silva, for Sarah, keep them coming. Welcome, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mugo. So I'm going to share with you the story of an informal settlement called Mukuru in Nairobi. Probably you can move to the next slide. And I'll start with where we started off with Mukuru. In the year 2011, we had a number of people come into our offices, and all of them came to us requesting us to assist them to purchase land because they risked the threat of eviction. And what they were telling us is that the landowners were requiring them to pay for the land or they would be evicted. And like you can see in this picture, evictions did occur in some of the areas within this area. Next slide, please. So what did we do? We immediately mobilized the community to resist the evictions. And then we got the assistance of an organization called the Katiba Institute in Kenya. And they filed a case restricting the people who were holding the land titles in Mukuru from evicting the residents. But we also realized that stopping an eviction is not enough because the conditions in Mukuru were terrible. And so we managed to get a grant from an organization called IDRC, and we conducted research. And we discovered that Mukuru was indeed a very marginalized area. We then approached the county government with the information we had gathered, and we requested the county government whether they could proceed to plan Mukuru. And the county government of Nairobi agreed, and in August 2017, declared Mukuru as a special planning area. Now, county governments in Kenya are permitted to declare an area as a special planning area if that area has unique development challenges. Now, we realized that Mukuru is a very large slum and we would not be able to plan this slum alone. So we worked with the county government to develop 8 consortia or 8 sectors of planning. And like you can see from this diagram, those sectors included housing, education, health, land, water sanitation, environment, and then 2 supporting areas, which are coordination and finance. In order to plan, we realized that we needed to mobilize expertise. And so again, we worked with the county government to mobilize 41 local and international organizations that were divided into these 8 sectors to form 8 consortia that would carry out the planning. Next. Now, the other thing we realized is that you cannot plan without the people. If you plan without the people, you're planning to fail. And so one of the consortia, the consortia that was tasked with mobilizing communities, mobilized the communities and held very many meetings. Like you can see here, around 200, more than 250 informal barazas were held. And then there were 114 now formal consultation meetings that were held by the 6, because there were 6 sector consortia. Next. Now I'll tell you a little about Mukuru. What was the area we are planning? Mukuru has the area that was declared as an SPA, has 3 big informal settlements. This is Mukuru kwa Jenga, Mukuru kwa Ruben, and Viwandani. The 3 Mukuru settlements cover an area of 689 acres and are home to 402,000 people. That is about 100,000 households. Now, the land on which the settlements sit, like I indicated, is private land that was granted by the state to individuals, and the individuals that were given this land by the government were given long-term leaseholds of about 99 years. However, their leaseholds had special conditions, and one of the special conditions that were in those titles is that the grantees should prepare plans and develop their land within 2 years of receiving the title. Now, another condition was that in the event that they failed to develop, the state was given the power to enter and take back the land. Now, like you can see in this case, because these titles were granted in the 80s and 90s, the land was never developed. So they were in breach of their development conditions. And this land was occupied by the 100,000 families that today call Mukuru home. Next. Next. Now, I told you earlier that one of the things we did after we got orders preventing people from being evicted in Mukuru was to conduct research under a grant that we received from an organization called IDRC. So what did we find in this research? We found that the people of Mukuru, the conditions for water provision in Mukuru are terrible. Water in Mukuru is generally provided by informal service providers who reticulate the water. They get the water from the mains and reticulate the water using very flimsy watertight pipes. These pipes are prone to breakage, and therefore there's a lot of contamination, water contamination, and disease is the order of the day in Mukuru. The other thing we found is that the people of Mukuru suffer a debilitating, what we call poverty penalty. And that means that they pay way more for water services than the rest of the city, yet receive much lower quality services and also much less quantity for the amount of water they get. In fact, from the research done by Strathmore University in this regard, they found that the people of Mukuru suffer a 172% poverty penalty. That is, they pay 172% more than the rest of the city for water. So when we did our consultations for planning, for the development of plans for Mukuru in regard to water, and we asked the people of Mukuru, what do you want? The first thing they said is dismantle, and in Kenya we call them cartels, the illegal cartels. Those are the people who provide water informally within informal settlements. They also said that they would like to see the quality of water improved and see that water, and to see the water they use become more affordable. They also proposed the sinking of boreholes within Mukuru so that they could increase the amount of water available, that water shortages were the thing of the past. They also proposed that every single plot, because in Mukuru people, the people in Mukuru live in one-room houses, and they live in what you call a plot. That is around 10 houses built around 10 rooms built around a courtyard, with, if you're lucky, a toilet and bathroom at the end. And so they said, within our plots, we would like to see our toilets connected to the sewer. Next. So that was the wish of the people of Mukuru. And then we talked about water. And from our research, we were able to establish, because in the research we did, we mapped every single structure, we mapped every single toilet, we mapped everything in that settlement. And through the mapping process that we undertook with the community, we were able to establish that Mukuru, with that population of 400,000 people, only had 3,863 toilets, and here I will clarify that most of them are pit latrines. Most of these pit latrines obviously need emptying because of the very heavy use. And what ordinarily happens, and if you look at the first picture towards the left, you will see two men pushing a barrel or a box on wheels. Now, what is in that box is raw human waste. So what ordinarily happens is that the toilets of Mukuru are exhausted manually, and the raw waste is dumped indiscriminately. Some of it could be dumped in let's just say it is indiscriminately dumped. And of course, the living conditions are terrible. Like you can see here, the next picture is of somebody trying to sort out their sanitation problem in whichever way they know. And what this household has done is that they have put a pipe and they are draining the raw waste into a drain just outside their house. And apart from just sewage, you can see the challenge that also exists in the settlement in relation to drain. The last picture is a picture of a drain. So what did the people of Mukuru say to this terrible living condition that is the lack of toilets? The people of Mukuru said that they would want to see every plot with a toilet. So if a structure owner is letting out a house without a toilet, then they said the state should intervene and ensure that every plot has a toilet. They also said that they would want to see every single toilet in Mukuru connected to the sewer so that you do not have men manually extracting human waste and disposing it indiscriminately. That's leading to disease. And Mukuru suffer or were suffering cholera every year. They also realized that within their settlements were trunk sewers. And so they proposed that the state should repair and extend the sewer connection, the sewer lines to enable for household or for plot level connections. That was the wish of the people of Mukuru. Next. Next. And the wish came true. Their wish came true. Last year, the Nairobi County government was dissolved and the Nairobi Metropolitan Services was put in place. And one of the first things this service did was to go to Mukuru. And they picked up the plans that the people had developed and they began implementing them. Like you can see here is evidence of the Nairobi metropolitan area repairing and laying down new trunk infrastructure and also laying down new drains. Presently, you can see the Nairobi Metro, if you look at the bottom, by December 2020, Nairobi Metropolitan Services had laid down 3.2 kilometers of sewer, trunk sewers, and 3 kilometers of water trunks within this area. And as a result of this infrastructure enabled Nairobi, what's up? Nairobi Water, NMS, and AMT to put in place a pilot project which would assist the people of Mukuru to connect to the existing sewers developed by the state and to have household or plot level connections as the people had requested. So in this pilot was targeted as a first pilot to assist 1,000 households. And so far, 55 plots have been connected to the sewer. Once the lessons from this have been learned, then it is our hope that this project will be extended to the whole of Mukuru and that the 100,000 households will not in the distant future, have at least flashable toilets within their plots. Next.
Okay, 3 minutes, Jen, to wind up.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the roads because, like Sylvia said earlier, it is impossible to lay infrastructure, especially water, sanitation, and drainage infrastructure that are so crucial without roads. And the people of Mukuru realized this. And they proposed, because their settlement had next to no roads, they proposed that the county government and the government build them 3 levels of roads. You can see arterial roads of 12 meters, sub-arterial roads of 9 meters, and collector roads of 5.5 meters. The arterial roads would permit public transport to enter into their settlements, which they did not have, while the sub-arterial roads would enable emergency services to also be provided and water and sanitation services. The plan was for a total of 49 kilometers of roads to be built. Next. Next. Again, this dream came true. This, from beginning last year, the government made a commitment to develop not the 49 kilometers that was proposed by the people, but 52 kilometers of road in Mukuru. That was the commitment that the government made. And to date, 17 kilometers have been built in Mukuru using the residents of Mukuru, and drains have been put down. As you can see in this picture, the roads come with drains, and in some places, they come also with footpaths. So the drainage system in Mukuru, which was prone to flooding, has greatly improved. Thank you. Next. Next. Another problem, frequent fires due to electricity. You can see here. This problem, and the people requested for formal connections. This problem needs to still be resolved. The government has tried. As you can see, we have formal posts here, but a lot of informal connections run by cartels. This is a challenge that still needs to be resolved. Next. Education, another big problem that was identified by the people. And here I'll go quickly and say Mukuru has about 94,000, about 100,000 school-going children. Yet the area, despite its poverty, has only 6 government schools and 182 informal schools that do not receive government support. This is despite the fact that Kenya has made a commitment to provide universal education. And because of this, speak in regard to water and sanitation, many of these 182 schools have very, very poor water and sanitation facilities. So the planning that has taken place will also support the provision of water and sanitation services to these schools. And right now, currently the NMS is working with the ministry to see how the 182 schools can be recognized so that the children of Mukuru can receive state support for education. Next. And school feeding programs.
Okay, wrap up, Jen.
This is the last slide. Yeah, so this is just an overview. You can see some of the problems. Garbage collection, at least now the county government and the NMS are collecting garbage. You can see the challenges of flooding and lack of drainage systems. So probably we can move to the next one, the next slide. So that is the end. Thank you. And I hope that this has been useful and educative and informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jen. Quite a huge piece of work and hugely successful. I will be speaking to you later in the next session. So any questions to Jen, please direct them to the chat box. And now I would like to welcome Sam Drabo, a very quick presentation on a report from WhatsApp on integrated slum upgrading. Welcome, Sam.
Okay, thank you, Mugo. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to Jane and Sarah and Silva and Narelle. They've been really fascinating presentations. So I just want to say a bit more about a new report, which covers a lot of the ground that we've heard about today. So this report was authored by Guy Norman, formerly of WhatsApp, now with Urban Research. And it was a collaboration between WhatsApp and Arquitectura Sin Fronteras España. And we were looking in this report to explore the challenge of integrated slum upgrading, but from the perspective of water and sanitation services. So the central question that we were responding to here is how can we link water and sanitation improvements with wider urban development? Now, just briefly, there were 3 core sections to this report. So we outlined the research findings that Narelle presented around how slum dwellers prioritize basic services. The really core case study to this report is the Habitat project that Sarah and Silva presented in Maputo, but we also reflect on the fascinating and extremely important experience from Mukuru in Nairobi that Jane presented, and also experience in Antananarivo, where WhatsApp has been supporting an initiative to tie in water supply with solid waste management and drainage. What I wanted to do with this time remaining is just to focus, next please, on recommendations for how to tie water and sanitation to wider slum improvement processes. So the report provides some specific recommendations, which I hope we'll share here to pave the way for the panel discussion to follow. Next. So the first recommendation, there are 4 core recommendations in this report. Integrated slum upgrading is the future. So we feel that the experience from the Habitat project, from Mukuru, reflects very clearly that water and sanitation actors like WhatsApp need to be looking for ways to support integrated slum improvement initiatives. That means we need to partner with civil society organizations like Slum Dwellers International to campaign for integrated slum upgrading. where those initiatives are taking place, we need to be looking to constructively engage with those initiatives, as WhatsApp has done with the work in Mukuru. Next, please. So 2, we need to be looking to integrate water and sanitation with land tenure improvement. So just to briefly reflect, there are a number of strong practical reasons that Nerea touched on why actors like WhatsApp would be looking to integrate water and sanitation with wider urban development. So there are strong connections between, for example, water and sanitation and solid waste management, between water and sanitation and road access, ensuring access for vacuum tankers, for example, to empty septic tanks. But I think the point that really stands out from the Habitat experience is the connection between water and sanitation and land tenure. So we know there's a connection there, for example, around water supply. Formalizing land tenure assists with rights of way or way leaves for network extension in low-income communities, informal settlements. Where there is security of tenure, households are more likely to invest in water connections. Utilities are also going to have less concerns around billing. It can be challenging to provide new connections and to bill effectively where there is no address, for example, or no formal land tenure exists. So around water supply, there are a number of advantages to this integrated approach. But what we see in the Habitat project is advantages around sanitation as well. So just briefly, WhatsApp has been working to support shared sanitation and communal sanitation in Chamankulo and other informal settlements in Maputo over a period of time. And by combining that work with the negotiation process for plot boundaries that Sarah and Silva outlined, that really assisted us in siting shared toilets and communal sanitation blocks effectively, in ensuring those facilities were in locations where vacuum tankers could access to empty septic tanks. And it also supported the community negotiation process. For example, we were able to compensate some landowners who might have lost access to a toilet through the negotiations or be unwilling to revise plot boundaries. We were able to compensate them through construction of new toilets. So there were synergistic impacts through the Habitat project that we see very clearly. And this is a clear connection that we would look to pursue in future projects, this basic connection between water and sanitation and land tenure. Next, please. So the third recommendation is to get out of that silo. And here we're stepping back perhaps from the project level, more to the global level. WASH organizations like WhatsApp, we need to be looking to partner with thought leaders in integrated slum improvement, again, like Slum Dwellers International, like Cities Alliance. And the report makes the point that there is mutually beneficial expertise there. So WhatsApp needs to work with these actors and other WASH actors to understand how we can contribute to wider urban development processes. But similarly, urban development actors perhaps stand to benefit from specialized support in water and sanitation that WASH actors can provide. And after all, water and sanitation is a core plank of really of any, should be a core plank of any integrated urban development initiative. Next, please. And the final recommendation is to integrate the funding. This type of integrated urban development work clearly needs funding. The World Bank has been obviously instrumental in the work in Mukuru. The Habitat project has been supported by a range of funders. WhatsApp's work was supported by a funder that very much understood the benefits of this type of integrated approach. But the case remains that most WASH sector funding currently is siloed and tied to short project mode of delivery, looking to reach the maximum number of beneficiaries, often in a short time for water and sanitation services specifically. That type of siloed approach doesn't only apply to water and sanitation, it applies to other subsectors of urban development. So to support this type of integrated work, we need funders to buy into this approach. And of course, that means that we need to make the case for the social and economic benefits of integrated urban development and tying in water and sanitation with these wider development initiatives. Okay, that was everything I wanted to say. I hope that's helpful in paving the way for the panel discussion to follow. Back to you, Mugo.
Oh, thank you very much, Sam. At this point, I would like to welcome our panel, all the presenters. That is mainly, I would leave my colleagues from WhatsApp out of this conversation. I would like Sarah, Silva, Jane to turn on their cameras. We start our panel. And at this point, I would like to introduce Mario. Mario, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Karaoke? Yeah.
Yes, we'll be happy to see if you can, but if you can't, no problem. Mario Kainga is a director of water and sanitation services at Nairobi Metropolitan Authority or Services, which is the authority that is managing services in Nairobi city. And Mario has a background in environmental science with his bachelor's in environmental science and a master's in integrated water resources management. He has 21 years experience in sanitation and waste management in various cities in Kenya. And Mario is very progressive and has been working with Jane and the entire consortium in trying to develop a model for integrated slum upgrade. Off with you because you have thoughts on integrated urban planning and especially the experiences of getting started with water and sanitation in Mukuru, and what are the plans to take this to the next step in Nairobi? Is there any hope or what are the plans that you have for this very successful model? Thank you. Over to you, Mario.
For the opportunity granted, and I'm happy to be part of this team. Actually, it has been quite an informative process. To me, integrated sanitation planning and management entails involvement of key actors, and this involvement has to start from the planning to implementation to even monitoring of the success and reporting and feedback to the public. The process has to involve a cross-section of issues, the social issues, physical planning issues, and physical infrastructural issues, environmental, and even economical issues. In this matter, I believe Jane has really given the clear background on what has been done in the process, and I didn't really dwell on that, but specifically on water and sanitation, we engaged in the planning or coming up with the sectoral plan for water, sanitation, and energy. We engaged different actors from the community level, the structure owners, the tenants, the academia, that is a university like Strathmore, and other. There was also another international university.
University of Berkeley.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yes. Thank you for that. Yes. Yeah, University of Berkeley. And also we involved several civil society, among them Water and Sanitation for Urban Poor, AMT, that is Akiba Mashinani Trust, SDI. We involved others that are also engaged in sanitation matters like Sanangi, to name a few of them. So the process also engaged business community, religious community, government entities, and that process, the document that came up, actually I can say through effort of Jane and the team, we were able to convince the end of state that this is a priority area. And because the report itself could speak for itself, it was very integral. The president accepted and directed that the works should be allocated money. And as we are saying right now, we are talking about having done 17 or 15 to 17 kilometers of water and sewer. And also we've been able to do connection through the simplified sewer system. The connection works is going on, and I'm told already 93 households are already connected. And we are expecting this to reach more people. And when we look at the progress happening, we are targeting around 50 kilometers, 52, Jane said about it. 52 kilometers to cover on issues of water and sewer and also other basic infrastructure, physical infrastructure. So what we are saying is that this process, it is a kind of, it has given a roadmap on how to address other informal settlement. Right now, His Excellency the President has also ordered for all other informal settlements to have water and sewer covered to over 500 kilometers of water and sewer done in other informal settlement, and the funds have been allocated to that effect. Similarly, also hospitals have been constructed in a number of informal settlements to level 4 hospitals in Kemaiko, Ushirika, Soweto, Gatina, Gishagi, and many more are going on, including Kwanjenga and boreholes. The target which was being done was given by a community of 12. I think we've done already. I believe we are doing to a tune of 10. So the progress is very, very encouraging, and we expect that these works will really benefit people. And I can tell you, if you have been there maybe 5 or years ago in Mukuru and you go now, you could get lost because there are big roads, very spacious. Vehicles are just able to access areas which were not accessible before. Water is available. The place has really changed. The buzzers, water buzzers, which have been bought by Nairobi Metropolitan Services, can give free water without obstruction because the area is getting open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. Pretty inspiring. I'll come back to Nairobi, but in the meantime, let me go to Silva. You have a very broad experience, and I would like to drill down on the experience in Chamankulu. You talked a lot about land tenure, and you talked about the wash improvement and the work you've done with WhatsApp and Architects Without Borders. How does improvements in water and sanitation services lead to secure land tenure? This is an empowerment process that you've talked about, but maybe just to hear from you how that relationship works. Thank you. Over to you, Silva.
Thank you, Mogu. I was switching on my mic. Yes, it is a very important question. And the big challenge is that we are improving the physical condition of neighborhoods by giving formal shapes to their plots, by widening the narrow roads and making sure that infrastructure can also be provided. I'm talking about electricity, water connections, and at a late stage, we'll have sanitation also being integrated. It works because in the original situation, utilities such as the water providers would never reach all the families because there is no way to dig and take the piping to their plots. So in terms of the change on the physical pattern, we are having success. From my experience, the main obstacle is not really physical, but it's social, because we are addressing the urban pattern, and we are still doing a little in terms of improving their source of income, their economic activities. And in other buyers, not in Chamankulu C, which is not finished now, and I've been sharing this with Sarah too during our discussions, the potential risk that we, by the time we have good standards in these areas regarding access to services and access to land tenure, these families, because of poverty, they will tend to transfer their plots to those who have more financial capacity to invest and develop the land, which creates a cycle, because when they get the money, they sell their goods, their poor properties for development by rich people. They will move to other places, vulnerable areas, which are the only places that are viable for those low-income families, and we will be repeating the cycle. We'll have to go there, use the same approaches, and do the upgrading and not make the change. So our next idea in this project is to bring this component of social empowerment of these families, including the gender issues, as most of these people are female, and we are targeting also this situation to make sure that upon the project upgrades the area, these people will be living in the area. And if there is a need to make any resettlement or relocation to a public services and common facilities, we need to find alternatives to resettle them in situ, in the same places or nearby, and not let them move to the other areas in which they will come again to zero and will have to improve their living conditions from scratch.
Okay, thank you very much, Silva. That's quite clear. I would like to move on to Jane, and one of the questions that have been asked by participants is about the next plans. We have seen the success of Mukuru SPA. So the next step, of course, will be, is it just to replicate, or are you still working on the other anchors of replication and scale so that it doesn't just end up as small interventions? What are you doing rather to make sure that this thing really goes to scale and covers as many poor residents of Nairobi and other cities in Kenya and beyond? Over to you, Jane.
Yes, thank you very much. I think there are two elements to this development. First is the need to deepen the work in Mukuru, because not all the sectors have been touched. So like I said, in education, we have 182 informal schools. And in Kenya, we have, within our constitution, the provision of universal free primary education, free basic, so not even primary, it's basic education that goes right up to a secondary school and vocational training. So that in Kenya is a commitment that we have made. Now you find, because of the land issue, and I go back to the land issue, the state has not developed any public schools in Mukuru, because in order to develop the schools, you need land, the area needs to be planned, and this area was never planned, and the land is still in private hands. So first is, it is important for the state to resolve the land question. It has the right to take back, and in a sense, it is taken back informally. I think it has, in its mind, it has taken back, because why would it be putting up all that development in Mukuru? But I think there probably needs to be a formal taking back so that the land issue can be resolved once and for all. So that precedent needs to be set so that schools can be built. Hospitals have been built on land in Mukuru already, private land, government land. But schools also need to be built. So we're currently working with the Ministry of Education, the Teacher Service Commission, to do an assessment of all the informal schools. And in that assessment, the government, the Ministry of Education, will assess all those schools that do more harm than good. And the schools that do more harm than good should be closed down. And then the ministry is going to look at the other schools that exist and that do good, but are definitely not up to standard. And the ministry has made a commitment to register them. Once these schools are registered, then they have access, they will have the right to have access to state allocations of resources. And therefore the state can be able then to intervene, build schools, put in the infrastructure, and also provide the basic services like teachers, school books, and learning materials. So that is one area that needs to be pursued and deepened. And other areas like water and sanitation, we still have to be able to do this in scale and to also learn whether the alternative sewer system, what is it called, Patrick? The simplified sewer system will be able to work We don't know. This is the first time. And probably in a year's time, we may find it has collapsed. But that doesn't mean that we give up. It means that we go back there again and we figure out how to make this work. So there's still that work that needs to be done. At the same time, and now I will complete, the government has declared, like Mr. Mario has said, the government has made a commitment to expand this work to all other informal settlements. So already, Kibera has been declared as a special planning area. And the government made a commitment to also declare Mathare as a special planning area. And in these two areas, there are civil society organizations. Like in Kibera, we have KDI that has made a commitment to work and support the state in developing the plans. And in Mukuru, we have and in Mathare, we have SDI Kenya that has made that commitment. So this is definitely going to scale. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. And I hope the participant who has a question has a better level of clarity. My last question goes to Sarah. We are running short of time. I wish I had more time for our very knowledgeable and enthusiastic panelists, but forgive me that we have to make do with the time that we have. Sarah, there's been a lot of conversations around silos and how to reduce that, because you come from a housing sector. Most of us here come from the water and sanitation sector. I can imagine that you really worked hard to get into working together with WASH organizations. How do you think we could work better in future from your learning to reduce this kind of sector silos that we work in, whether in planning or whether in investment or financing? What do you recommend that should be the way in future?
Very interesting question, Mudu. I think about working in silos is it's very practical in a way of getting funds. I'm working WASH, I'm working housing, I'm working schooling, I'm working that. But in the end, people live and they live with everything. So it makes sense to work integrally. The big challenge is to prioritize and to understand that some things come before the others. And when it comes before, it makes easier everything else. So for example, in Shamankulo, by opening streets and defining limits, this is the street, it's much easier after to do whatever pilot, fantastic water system access. If you try to put water system before streets, then you're going to fight with every single neighbor in the alley. If you have a street, you don't fight with anyone. So it's about understanding what has to go first, and understand that being first doesn't mean you're more important. It makes easier everything to work together. So it's about prioritizing. And what we're doing in the Plano de Pormenor is understanding that urbanism has to explode. Normally, urban planners, we plan and we build, and we never build without planning. It's simply not possible. But when you talk with people and you go to a settlement that has already been built, you need to plan with the people. And that means you're not 2-year planning diagnosis process. You talk with the people, this is my limit, you build, and then you start planning the bigger things. So it's about really restructuring the thought of all the planners, being WASH, urban, everything. Thank you.
Spot on. Thank you very much. My dear panelists and participants, we are coming to the end of this session. I wish I could take more questions from panelists, but I hope my presenters and panelists can stay on and respond to a number of questions on the chat box. Please do that. You can also exchange contacts after this. We still have some more minutes after I end the session. We can still continue to be on the chat box for a few more minutes. At this point, I would like to give my panelists half a minute each to say a parting shot. What would you like to tell us about integrated slum upgrading from your own experience, from your own thoughts? Leave us with a few words. Thank you. And I'll start with Mario.
Okay. To me, integrated slum upgrading, particularly focusing on sanitation and water, is involvement of wide spectrum of actors from different levels of professional understanding, academia, and particularly political leaders and community who have to operate and own the whole process.
Thank you very much, Mario. Silva?
Thank you. I would particularly like to identify a way to shorten this project cycle. We are spending a long time with the preliminary studies, particularly the baseline and the right approaches. By the time we have enough resources to implement and make the change, either people are very old and they are not making use of what we are offering them, or the situation has changed dramatically and we had to go back to adapt or adjust the studies and the results. So I'd like to see a way to shorten the whole project cycle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Very, very wise. I would like to give this opportunity to Jen.
Yeah, thank you. I think the WhatsApp research that identified lack of political will and bureaucracy, those things are very, very real. And in order to push for an integrated slum upgrading program, somebody needs to be resilient, they need to be persistent, and they need to be there. And I think, Silva, I think that is what you were referring to. You say you wish the time could be longer, slower, shorter, because that's the reality of integrated planning and ensuring that the people, that everybody, you go with everybody as much as possible and that you're not running ahead alone.
Thank you. Powerful. Thank you very much, Jen. And Sarah? You're on mute, Sarah. You're on mute.
I would like to share with all the panelists, first a big thank you. I learned a lot. Jane, Maria, we are picking all this for the project. Sam, thank you. I would like to share that imagining starts with image, and that it has been an amazing tool for us, because an image is something you see, you perceive, and suddenly everyone speaks the same language. So it has been very powerful, and we keep using it. We don't try to use so many words. We just try to say, it's this, and suddenly everything starts to flow. So in order to slum upgrade, we need to speak the same languages, all the actors, all the stakeholders.
Spot on. Thank you very much. So in conclusion, I would like to summarize this session. Three things that I've heard very consistently. Number one is about the people. So plan with the people, plan for the people. It leads to empowerment. It leads to poverty reduction, what was called poverty penalty. So integrated slum upgrading, putting services together is about the people. So put people at the center of whatever development initiative that you have. The second one is about land tenure. And we've heard that, there are various initiatives of formalizing, of regularizing land tenure. But the basic message is the government needs to take over its land. So work with the government and make sure that people, out of all this process of development, people have secure land tenure. And the third lesson is about get out of the silos. So your planners, your doers, your enablers, all of you, get out of your silos, talk to each other, put things together, start with an image, and everything else starts to work. So on behalf of WhatsApp, Architects Without Borders, and Akiba Mashinani. I want to thank you very much for being here. And I want to thank you, all my presenters and organizers, for making this successful, and for iClay for giving us this opportunity. Thank you. Bye-bye. The chat box is still open, so continue to engage. Thank you very much.